Here we go. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Pedophile Huntress. We're here this evening with a common goal, that you be encouraged in heart and united in love. We hope that we can intervene in areas of your life that you've been struggling with. We want you to know that we've been there, that we've lived through it, and that we understand. We welcome you tonight. Tonight, we're going to focus on talking about the parts that are intricately woven in our lives coming through childhood sexual crimes. It kind of hides in different crevices, and we're going to talk about that, how our thoughts and beliefs are changed. We also want to talk to you guys about, is it okay to take breaks from counseling, from EMDR, and other such healing modalities? I think that's a really good topic to talk about. And then I really wanted to talk about how you pray, or if you pray, and how you cry out to God, or if you cry out to Him. And to me, there's real good reasons to talk about this because our family wearies of listening to us, our friends weary of listening to us. But I'll tell you what, coming through these crimes that last for years and years and years, you need someone to talk about. So I thought that we could talk about what that looks like in our lives. So I want to welcome Emily and Carol back with me. Anybody who's listened to the podcast for time, which actually it just turned over the 10,000 mark on all different, on Apple and on Spotify. Yeah, really cool, actually. Even in you guys, YouTube, I hit the 10,000 mark. It's going over that. And I just, again, think it's interesting for the listener that, I have 135 followers. Isn't that wild? And on Spotify, I only have 72, but Apple Podcast actually is the highest, 72% of my podcast listeners. So I just welcome you guys. I know that this is a tough thing. People don't even like to participate through subscriptions or whatever. I get it. I'm out here doing this because we love you guys. We care. Ultimate healing is always giving back and taking our eyes off of our own pain because it helps us grow, right, as human beings. So anyway, welcome, ladies. I love having you guys here with us. It's just fantastic. We've really decided that we're going to do these discussion podcasts once a month. Then I will have other people on at other times, but I love being with these ladies, and it's just a great discussion platform. So let's go ahead and talk about, let's just move into you guys. And I know you guys know this because all of us were abused for multiple years in our childhood. When that happens, our belief systems are changed. Our thoughts are changed. Like for me, I don't trust people. I have a hard time trusting people. You do one thing and instantly my heart's like, I don't trust you. I'm going to go. You know what I mean? And I try super hard, you guys. I love people. I'm compassionate, but you know what? I like spending a lot of time alone because it's safe. Do you guys? So, that's one thing for me, but you guys talk about these effects that I've been in counseling for 20 years. They're still with me. And while I'm much, much better, I mean, I used to drink 2, 3 bottles of wine a night just to get through the terror of just all the sexual abuse and the murder and all of these things. But I certainly don't do that anymore. So while we grow, talk to me about some of the things that are left in your life. Carol, you can go ahead and start tonight with, what does that spark in you when I bring that up?
It sparks a whole lot with me. And I think the primary thing is, like you're saying, is not feeling safe. Like you're saying, I've been doing this for a lot of years, for about 30 years, trying to recover. And it's very difficult to regain that trust of other people and a sense of safety. And I'm extremely protective of children, as you might imagine.
Exactly.
I just cringe so many times when I hear they're put in a new program and they're with caregivers that we don't really know, like my grandkids. Letting them walk in front of the house is our latest issue, and it terrifies me, So and you want to get over it, and it's very hard to know where the line of healthiness is, where is it
I
where
laugh
you're,
because yes, I agree.
are you
Right.
making your kids crazy, or what is the line? And so that
Well,
certainly
right.
hides in my
Ex
brain.
exactly, because one of the things is when people don't come from this, I work with counselors in the CASA program, and either they're in denial or they have no experience with trauma. You know what I mean? Because I
Mm-hmm.
listen to them and I'm thinking, you are really making light of this stuff. And I wonder, you guys, if it's experience too. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
because we saw the darkness that life can bring,
Mm-hmm.
and some people just don't have that experience. And so then they minimize, right? They minimize,
Yeah.
minimize, minimize. And we're like, why the
Yeah.
heck are you minimizing?
Yeah.
Emily,
And
go
if
ahead and oh, I'm sorry, Carol, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I think when people haven't experienced this, they have no idea
Right.
what lurks, and particularly by, people that seem very normal. Sexual abuse
Oh,
does
it's
Mm-hmm.
so
that. These
true.
do
Mm-hmm.
not, these people don't necessarily look, really
Creepers around the
scary.
corner.
Right.
They're
And
not
so
creepers around the corner.
I don't fully trust anybody unless I know them a long time
Mm-hmm.
and see what they do. So I don't know how you feel about that, Emily.
Well, I was actually just talking with my husband about this because Jody, I listened to a couple of your snippets on the podcast feed. I was trying to get my head into this space to prepare for
Mhm.
tonight. And you had the clip about what love really is versus how you internalize what quote unquote love is in an
Mhm.
abusive relationship. And something that I had to learn was that I didn't have to make restitution for a mistake I made. I didn't have to be punished for
Mm.
Mm,
doing something wrong. So, an example, the first night my husband and I were at our new apartment after getting married, I went out in our one car that was a gift from my husband's grandfather to him. I went out to pick up dinner. We had driven all day to get to our destination. And when I was parking in the parking garage under the apartment, I didn't give enough clearance and I completely scraped the whole side of my husband's
Oh
car.
no.
So I instantly expected him to be angry. I expected to be belittled, to be yelled at, all those things which I had
mhm,
experienced always in my life. And he just hugged me and he said, "Are you okay? It's okay. It's a car." And that will forever
Mm.
stick in my mind. And that was
It's beautiful.
almost 20 years ago.
Mhm.
So that's an example of how my expectation when I make a mistake, I have a hard time because I'm full of fear if I make a
Right.
mistake.
You know what's funny though? What I really hear underneath that is a complicity, how we're complicit in these acts
Mm-hmm.
with them. And you guys, you know what? We are not complicit in these crimes. We are
Mm-mm.
100% victims, but we don't ever get treated like we're victims. We
No.
don't treat ourselves like we're victims. We treat ourselves like somehow we allowed this or wanted. I mean, I don't even
Right.
think
And
we
that
go
is
there
a
in our mind.
message that
Yes.
I have internalized before and had to work through.
Yes.
So, yes, that. And
If
then
there's a
another's
problem, we're the problem.
yeah,
right.
we're always
Yeah.
the
Right.
cause of it.
And that's
Exactly.
definitely something that I've had to retrain my brain in, right?
Mhm.
And like recognize when that pattern's coming through and not take on everybody else's problems as my problems and all of that. Because I've always wanted to get like what I ended up doing in my family was trying to get through with the least waves possible, like to
Yes.
fix
Right.
everything. So I
Be a good
wouldn't,
girl.
yeah.
Be a good
So
girl.
regardless of how I felt underneath, right? But that's what I was trying to self preserve for good reason. But another one is that for a long time, I couldn't take up space. So, like, let's say I'm in the kitchen, somebody else walks into the kitchen, I will automatically get out of their way and move because
Mm,
I defer, I defer, I defer.
Boy,
So,
I resonate with that
yeah,
too.
I do too.
like,
Hmm.
I grew up in such a domineering space where you're always on eggshells because you never want to offend or set anybody off.
Right.
And um
Well,
I
stay
think that's
invisible, right?
right. Yeah, just like keep it on the down low because you don't
Mhm.
want to get anybody upset.
Right.
And so that was something that and I still work on it, like if I'm coming down a
Mhm.
stairwell and somebody else is coming, I will I will always dodge and get out of the way. But it's like, no,
Mhm.
it's okay that you're coming down a stairwell. Like, it's okay. So, like
Mhm.
growing into my own, being my own self and taking up space. That's
Yeah,
something I
I
think
think
of.
that's huge though. I do because thinking about that again, when you're a child and nobody validates what happens to you and nobody helps you, the message really is stay hidden and don't bother my world. You're just a
Hmm.
bother. And when you're just
Hmm.
a bother and you come to the world as an adult, that those messages don't change easily, right? I mean,
Hmm.
they really don't change easily.
No.
Yeah, Carol, I don't know. It just makes me think so much. And the weird thing is, I was going to read this passage in this book, my book, A Prisoner by No Crime of My Own. It's just really funny that you say that. I just happened to be looking at it today, and this was after the murder, and we had returned home, and my mom was waiting for us. And I write, my little world had been invaded by an act of destruction that I could never unsee. I felt a desperate need for someone to even look at me, for any kind of attention. If someone could have just held me, if even for a few seconds, those hours and the next hours of torture could have been eased. Truly, I would have settled for someone just talking to me. I was
Hmm.
used to not receiving care, but I did need someone to help me, maybe ask me what I needed. You know what, you guys, this
Hmm.
this is a theme though, whatever it is. That's for the rapes that happened, it's all of it, but
Hmm.
it's what we're talking about. We're not really seen. So like when we're in the way, we're in the way. We're always in the way, right? We're
Yeah.
not
And
Hmm.
seen.
we don't have enough value to take up space.
Hmm.
We're
Exactly.
something to be, swept under the carpet. And
Oh my
and
God,
and
that's
of
so
course all our
true.
feelings, like you're saying, Jody, all our feelings were of no importance. Nobody gave a damn about what we were feeling. At
Right?
least I felt like that.
No, I
Hmm.
absolutely felt, and I know Emily
Yeah.
did too. Because when you go and you ask for help and nobody helps you, there's no other. This isn't
Hmm.
actually a hard thing. That's 1 + 1 = 2. You know what I mean? That's not
Yeah.
even confusing. It's
Hmm.
pretty simple. You be quiet, go like you said, just go under the rug. Because one of the things that we talk about often is really child abuse is actually adults don't like it because it wrecks their world, you guys. They can't be
Hmm.
narcissistic and just have their pleasures, live their little Edens. They don't want to be disturbed by it. Oh, don't tell
That's
me that because
exact.
then
Yeah.
I have to do something. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Because then my facade and my house of cards is
Yes,
It's gonna
completely
crumble.
disrupted and I am not ready for that. Yeah.
I
right.
like
Like,
that, your house of cards, yeah. And
mhm,
I'll say with the kitchen, I felt like I had a lot of trauma with it. My mother, would blow up and I would just tiptoe, around the
Hmm.
kitchen. And if I didn't do it right, I was in trouble. If I came in, I
Hmm.
was in trouble. If I did something, it didn't matter what it was. So there's already a lot of trauma around just being in a silly kitchen.
Yeah.
Um,
It's every day and
it's
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 every
every
crazy.
day.
day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's
Yep. And
funny,
then,
Carol, when you say that, I think of my mom, and I don't know why this has come back to me many times in my life, and I'm not sure why, but our kitchen, there was a stairwell that came into the kitchen, a
mm,
stairway, and I hid there, and my mom was making rice pudding, and it would take like 2 hours, and she was reading a book, and it stuck in my mind just watching her because I couldn't have gone to her and talked to her. I would have been a
Hmm.
bother, but I don't know why it's so weird. It's kind of etched in my mind just watching her there that night, probably
mhm.
wanting her, probably wanting to know who she
Hmm.
was. And I bet I was probably 7 or 8, but she just wasn't part of my world. It really wasn't.
Hmm.
And so it's weird when you say that there was something about that was their dominion. And my mom was kind of a
Yes.
rageaholic too. And you just didn't go in there. Like I just
You
didn't go
just,
in there, but
yeah.
I was watching the scene. I don't know why that stuck in my mind. Isn't that
Hmm.
interesting? But it
Yeah.
is. And like you
Well,
say, yeah.
you feel like you're outside. That's how
Yes.
it felt to me.
Yes. Even in our
I
own
was out.
homes,
Yes, absolutely. And that links to a sense of home, right?
right?
Or
Hmm.
not.
right?
which is huge.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah.
wow, and then again, where do you ever feel comfortable in life? When you
Mhm.
never had the peace of feeling comfort in your own bed, in your own
Yeah,
Hmm.
home, then
right.
how, it's funny because people talk about peace a lot. And I know my counselor used to tell me, Jody, if I can get you off red alert to amber, I've done my job.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I live with that. And the older I get, I'm learning to be more peaceful. It helps to live in the country and not the city. But in the city, you can probably find peace as well. Just for me, that worked. I healed a lot being
Mm,
out in nature. But yeah, it's interesting. So one of the other things, you guys, that I thought about which that's profound, you guys, to talk about not having peace in your own home as a child, or not feeling
yeah.
welcome, and only
Mhm.
being there as a piece of trash that's could be disposed. But the other thing that has been hard for me is I grapple with, because when I went to my family and talked about this, at first a few people came out, and then all of a sudden everybody was lying. Then my dad lied, and then my dad said Satan planted in my head to destroy him. Then my mom lied. And so,
Mm.
do you guys have a problem when people talk? I'm always wondering if they're lying or not. Is that something that you guys grapple with at all,
Yeah.
or no?
No, I definitely, and of course, I'm talking, the closer you are with the family, I mean, the more you're questioning everything,
Right.
that's being said. Yeah. And trying to figure out, are they understanding at all, or are they part of the problem,
Right. Right.
Yeah, I think that's always there. Trusting relationships is very hard.
Yes, it
And yeah,
is.
Mm.
yeah.
Emily, what do you think about
So,
that?
Jody, do you mean generally or do you mean people within the
No, I
family?
mean generally, because it even extends outside of my family. People will tell things, and I want to know if they're exaggerating, if they're telling the
Mm,
truth, because I
Mhm.
gauge trustworthiness on truth telling. Because I've
Mhm.
noticed as I've aged, to me, if you can't stand in your truth in life, I don't have a whole lot of time for you anymore, because
Mhm.
you live in fantasies, you live in
Mhm.
denials, you live in,
yeah.
I'm going to change my story or sanitize my story. I
Hmm.
like hanging out with people that don't sanitize their story and they're comfortable with it anyway. So
Well, and you know how destructive that is, so it makes perfect sense.
exactly. It's so destructive, you guys. I would have
Mhm.
never been the person I am today, which I just got another wonderful, wonderful kind of promotion raise at work. So I believe
Oh,
in this
good.
is right. And so, I mean, and the reason I say that is all of this hard work to heal and do all these things,
Mhm.
it is recognized in life. But I love talking about these things that are ever present with us, right? And so I
Mhm.
can tell when people exaggerate, or, and sometimes maybe they don't, but I'm looking anyway. It's
Well,
just that's that thing that's left. And there is a high cost to hang out with people
mhm.
who minimize, right? And dismiss
Oh,
important
yeah.
things.
You
And
know, I think I have a really good radar,
mhm.
but I think because of my grandparents' influence, which you might remember from my story,
Go ahead and
I
Very
say
had
it.
good.
some I had some really good experiences with
Hmm.
them, and they were very trustworthy and they
That's
cared for
cool.
me well. And so I'm grateful for that, but I definitely have a pretty good BS meter. Like,
Right.
if the
And maybe
CEO
that's a
of
good way to say it. Go ahead.
if I started a job a couple years ago, and as soon as the CEO sat down for the orientation, I was like, I didn't trust him. And he was, supposed to be someone trustworthy, of course. And
Mhm.
I remember that very pointedly when you said that, Jody. I just was like, no, I,
Mhm.
and then I ended up quitting that job right before they fired all the dietitians. So,
Oh,
Wow.
wow.
so,
You had a
like, I
good,
think that's good. You have a good
that's a good intuition.
instinct.
Yes.
And so that's one of the benefits of going through something as
Yeah.
terrible as we have is
Mm.
you have experience with reading people, as
That,
unfortunate as it
yeah,
was, right?
and I think that's very true. We started reading. I always say that I've been listening and watching since I was 4. And I have, because you guys
Yeah.
think about
Mhm.
that. We're on hypervigilance, they call it now.
Mhm.
I
Whatever
was
you
gonna
call it.
say
Yeah.
hypervigilance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah. We
know
have to be.
we
I
have to
mean, that's the only
be.
way you survived
It is
Mhm.
the only
this
way.
growing up is really
Mhm.
watching. And And I also feel, excuse me, Jody, I think
No,
I,
no, you're fine. Go.
but, you know, I think that, yeah, I just had to be that way. And thank God I was. And probably thank God I'm, you know, hyper vigilant with children now. You know,
Mm-hmm.
when I see how people, you know, how they'll let somebody babysit that they don't even know. And I don't know. I just could never do that. I just,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Well, and I'll tell this story just a little bit, but in my own family, this situation happened where a grandparent said, "Can I take this grandson just on a road trip?" And we all went, "Don't let it happen." And guess
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
That child came back and had
Mm.
many stories to tell, looking for ticks. And then, of course, the stories grow. And
Oh,
you know what?
no.
I always err on the side of saying, no, you know what? I'm uncomfortable with
Yeah.
that. But what for
Mm-hmm.
some reason, pedophiles make us just give, go against your instinct and say, oh, go
Yeah.
ahead. These are
Hmm.
babies. These are babies. And it's our
Mm-hmm.
job. We're entrusted to keep them safe. So, Carol, I don't think I tell everybody that I know, if I offend you, then don't stand by me. But I'm going to err on the side of saying I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Only when it comes to a child might not be safe. I don't get easily offended by all this political BS and all that. I
Mhm.
don't. I mean, that kind of stuff doesn't offend me. But when I do see something in a child or in a relationship and I don't feel like it's right, I speak up. I
Mm-hmm.
absolutely speak up. And in my
Absolutely. Have
And
family,
I've definitely upset some people about it
oh
by
yes.
speaking up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, it's
Mm-hmm.
Because pedophiles can be the kindest,
yep,
sweetest people, and they're grooming the child and the parent. You know, the
Mm-hmm.
parents are like, oh, yeah, we really like Uncle Bill. You know, he's such a nice guy, brings
yep,
gifts, whatever.
yep.
And people fall for it, you know?
Well, I don't
Yeah.
know if you guys listened to that Michael Jackson, those two men that did that
Mhm.
interview. That was fascinating. And he actually groomed the parents
Yeah.
tremendously. He would call and say, "Oh, I need help. I need comfort." He'd go to their house. Like the grooming was just classic grooming. And
Huge.
he bought houses for them. And then these parents honestly let their children stay in situations that were so miserably unsafe,
Hmm.
kind of for their own benefit too. I mean, I hate to say that, but when you listen to
Yeah.
these
Mm-hmm.
poor children that live through it, it's
Hmm.
the same thing that people do. I don't want to be bothered by it. Like I posted
Mm-hmm.
this saying that said something about, it's if you don't listen to a child when they're little, maybe that's, you can get by with that, but you will when they're adults and they come back to you, you're going to pay for that. And
Yeah.
a lot of people like that because it's true. When those adults come
Mm-hmm.
back and say, dude, you didn't listen to me.
Right.
I
Right.
needed you, right? All right. So
Hmm.
staying on track here, one of the other things that I really did was I turned to addiction, even as a child.
Hmm.
I had great confusion. Like as a child, I can't say I know now that it was pain, but I was so confused and just trying to survive, guzzling on daily doses of just damage that you don't define it as pain, but I remember as a child eating to the point of I'd go back to my bedroom and just throw up all over my bedroom floor. And,
Mm-hmm.
I ate my way into a pretty size 20 at that time. Then, of course, I needed to have boyfriends. So then I lost weight to get out of that. My dad gave me that awful book called Help Lord, the Devil Wants Me Fat. And you had to fast for 10 days. I think Satan wrote that book, but that's another podcast.
Gosh.
It's a horrible book. So anyway, then I lose all this weight, but now guess what? Now I turn to alcohol because
Yeah.
I needed something to fill that void. And
Hmm.
indeed it was a real void. I know people don't understand this, but one time I heard this AA lady say, without alcohol, I would have died. And I know people don't
Hmm.
get that, but whatever makes us survive, you guys,
Yeah.
I'm of the mindset now, we don't want you to I don't want to destroy myself. But during a few of my years, I was in such deep, deep pain going through the murder investigation. And then all of that time period was all these
Mhm.
rapes and all this stuff going on. Oh my God, I had to go to work, I had to go to bed, and I couldn't. So I don't know. You guys talk about that. I feel I'm very cautious about this, but addictions also kind of save us a little bit. Does
Yeah,
anybody
they
know what I'm
do.
talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And my
Mm-hmm.
therapist was saying, you know, you should, and I have had problems with sugar addiction. And my therapist said you should thank yourself for coming up with something to
See?
soothe yourself. You
Mhm.
had, when you have nothing soothing you and taking care of you, the emotional part of you, you've got to figure out something on your own, and again, it's kind of a survival thing that just doesn't work once
Mhm.
you're an adult, but
Well, and I think that's a beautiful way to say what I've always said. You know what I mean? Because when the kids would say, "Mom, you're drinking too much," I knew I was drinking too much. I knew one day I wouldn't drink too much. I had to get through that day. I got up and went to work. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, but I didn't have anybody else there with me. For years
Mhm.
was single and I was in counseling, and in counseling rips off a lot of wounds, right? And
Yeah.
I can remember sitting in that counseling office thinking, I'm going to have a few drinks when I'm done here. And then I
Yeah.
gamble. You know what? I was still healing. I really don't think people
Mhm.
understand that healing's a process and it's messy, right? And so I like to be really authentically raw about what it looks like. It's not like,
Mhm.
oh, I got a cup of tea and I sat down and I journaled. It didn't look like that at all. I
No.
would bawl in the shower. I would
Yeah.
drink too much and then take a bath and cry. But I
Yeah.
also went back to counseling. You know what I mean? Like I
Mhm.
also did the work that he asked me to do. So it wasn't like I just checked out. Sometimes I check out for a while, but then I came back to the work. So Emily, what is that? What do you have to say about this?
Yeah, well, I think I like skated along a lot of different addictions. So for a while, I was overeating a whole lot to numb out when I was a kid. I remember it very distinctly
Mhm.
because all the
Me
attention was
too.
going to my abuser, and I was just so sad and in the shadows. And I remember that feeling of eating to the point of just a lot of discomfort. And then I kind of switched the other way when I was in high school. I was definitely teetering towards anorexia nervosa. And,
Mm.
as a dietitian, I know all the diagnostic criteria for anorexia
Mhm.
nervosa. I never hit those exactly. And I can thank a dietitian actually for helping me, but I was near heading down that slope. Like, I think I would have ended up in treatment if I had not
Mm.
encountered that woman to help me. But I've
Mhm.
always used physical activity as a coping mechanism to the
Mhm.
point where I would say it would be classified in the past for me as addiction. But again, I would much rather be out running 10 miles than, acting
Dealing
on
with pain. Right.
acting on suicidal thoughts,
Right.
or, you know, other forms of self-harm or panic
Mhm.
attacks or whatever,
Mhm.
the
Right.
alternative would have been at that time, or being home. Honestly, like, being outdoors just got me out of the house, and
Oh,
moving
I've heard a lot
took
of victims
me
say that. Yep.
just it was a place for me to be that was not
Mhm.
in
Right.
a toxic home.
Right.
Right.
And the other thing that's been consistent for me through my life, which is mixed and I have to keep a rein on even now, is academics and career, because I love to
Mhm.
learn and I can just get completely lost in my books, and
Right.
it's a beautiful world to be lost in, and chemistry is amazing to me, and I just
Mhm.
love memorizing every bit that I can get my head around, which
Funny.
has served me well, yeah, in my career,
Mhm.
but to the detriment of social relationships
Right.
at
Yeah.
times. I was in college and it was a Saturday night and I was studying chemistry. I was like sitting at the table, my house, studying chemistry. And a friend stopped by and he's like, "You are a 20-year-old woman," or I was 21 by that time. "You're a 21-year-old woman in college. I'm going to take you out." And so basically, I was out of balance to the point
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was losing richness and health in my life.
Mhm.
And it's interesting that academics can become that for some people, but it was my sanctuary for
Oh, I
sure.
think it's true. You
Yeah,
know,
from forever.
one of the things
I'm
that
a chemist.
you
Sorry.
are?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
that's cool.
yeah, I have several degrees, and one of them's chemistry. And I worked in process chemical engineering for a long time in Silicon Valley.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
It's beautiful stuff.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, and to hear all of us so accomplished, it's a beautiful thing too. And in my podcast a week ago, I talked about the strength of survivors, because it's really
Mhm.
true. Although I
Mhm.
like to talk about these things because I do feel like it's an intervention for a lot of people to hear that these are just common themes. And one of the common themes that we all just brought up was food in childhood. Do you know what I
Mhm.
think? What else do we have at our disposal,
Mhm.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, I suppose you could sneak booze or whatever. There was a lot of booze in my house. I didn't, but food is that. And I
Mhm.
wonder, our relationship with food, sadly, I was even talking to the Lord about it today, kind of at work, because we had this rep come in and she brought these beautiful pastries. I don't eat that kind of stuff. And I let myself have half of one. And
Mm.
then, I just berate myself. And I think this is so ridiculous that I can't have a normal relationship with food.
Yeah, with food.
You know what I
Mhm.
mean? It's so,
Mhm.
you guys, and so that to me is another residual effect of my
Mhm.
childhood.
Mhm.
Mhm.
What do you guys think about that?
I think eating disorders are very linked to sexual abuse.
I do too.
And I've seen quite a bit written about that. I mean, it's certainly like you read trauma experts, they'll, always include that when you've had this
Mhm.
severe trauma, and like you say, Jody, that as a child, you just don't have a lot of outlets for the
Mhm.
emotion.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, and so I think it's a very common one. I think it's whether it's compulsive overeating, bulimia, or
Mhm.
anorexia, it
Right.
seems to go with the body shame, the the very skewed view of your
Mhm.
physicality. There's many issues that tie together with that. So
Right. Emily, and here you're
Mhm.
a dietitian. Do you think that has something to do with trying to get, your relationship with food in order?
Yeah, definitely. And in fact, that encounter with that woman in college was so powerful to me, that dietitian in college, that
Mhm.
it changed my trajectory of my career, because I realized this is powerful. And
mm,
I, s- it was such a healing time for me, and my work with her was so healing, that I mean, I think that my relationship with food has been ongoing through my life, but I'm personally have done so much work, because in order to be an ethical practicing dietitian, you have to do
Right.
your own work.
That's
So,
cool.
yeah, I've done a lot, and I've been through a program called the Body Positive and became a licensed
Oh yeah, I've heard of that.
facilitator for that program.
Mhm.
So, yeah, at this point, I feel really good about eating and food and myself, but I don't know if that will be forever. There's no guarantee, right? But I've definitely had ups and downs, struggles, um, and know that I always need to be aware of that for myself.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Exactly.
yeah.
It's really
Like you're
true.
saying, Jody, this healing is very much a roller coaster
Mhm.
ride. It just goes way up and way down, and
Mhm.
that's
Really
normal.
good weeks, then not good weeks.
Yeah, not good weeks, and yeah,
Exactly.
very difficult
Mhm.
times, and it just seems to be how that's how it goes. Although the really ugly, horrible pain, I think, goes away,
Yes.
and you get more of this kind of more numbed out kind of feeling, I think.
Well,
Where
which actually leads me right into the next thing that I want to talk about is, and then we're going to talk about that, Carol, is when is it okay to take breaks from counseling,
yeah.
EMDR, and all of the other healing modalities? I know some people actually, it's kind of like becoming a professional student. They become like a
Yeah.
professional go to counseling guy. Look, I want to go there and get in and get out and get back to life, right? Because
Hmm.
I don't want this to be a forever gift that keeps on giving, right? And so, today what we do is just share what this looks like. But I had somebody send that question in to me. I've heard you, Jody, say that you've stopped through the years. Now, yes, it was a 20-year process, but I'd take a year off or something. But the
Hmm.
reason why I thought that was a great segue is what I think, and then I want to hear from you guys. When I took breaks, there was so much dust that had come out of my soul that, and there's so much, my mind, while I wasn't confused, there was just a lot that I had to incorporate into myself. And so
Hmm.
to me, if we don't stop and take breaks, you can't just keep rolling,
Mhm.
rolling, rolling. because you know what I mean? Like you're just going to get bloody after a while. You have got to stop and pause and say, number one, bring compassion to yourself. All of this happened to me and this is real. And I'm so sorry nobody was there. And my mind needed to process it. Like our minds
Mhm.
kept us safe and I needed to process it. And then I needed to find how I incorporated that back into Jody because
Mhm.
you have a propensity to want to throw it away. But if I throw it away, then I don't have a whole lot left of me, right? I have no
Mhm.
childhood. And so to me, I liked stopping because I didn't know that's what I was doing. But as I look back and I did it through the years, I realized I needed to incorporate that part in me and I needed to grieve it. I needed to honor it, all of those things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe run from it, maybe be pissed off, all of those things. So, what can you guys talk about? Do you believe in taking breaks? Do you, or did you just go, solid 10 years with no breaks? Talk to me about that. Emily, go ahead and start first.
Well, I think I've definitely taken breaks. I started talking all about all of it when I was like 16 or 17 outside the
Right,
home. I started
right.
healing, like some real intense healing in college. Um, but it's interesting because I almost feel like God, life, others like present me with the next thing. It's like, okay, this is the next thing that needs to heal. There's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a seeing, there's like a realization, and a very obvious need to seek help because I'm breaking down. I can't figure this out. It's completely confusing and debilitating. Um, so I've had multiple instances of that kind of thing, which has led me to seek help. And I started counseling in 2010-ish, no, 2008-ish. I don't know, somewhere around there. I have to look at my journals. But I went through about 5 years then, 6 years, then took a break, then 2020. And what's interesting is my therapist actually prompted me to take breaks. They're
That's a
like,
good therapist.
yeah, I've had two really good therapists. They're like, you need to just go live your own life for a while
That's cool. That's
because
a good therapist.
I was taking on my parents' problems too, right?
Oh,
And
right.
it's like, no, 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 you do your life. They need to do their work.
Right.
You can't try to fix them. You can't try to figure them out. It's probably never going to be figured out. So then they've prompted me twice now. So when I was pregnant with my daughter, my therapist said, you need to be able to just be a mom and call me if you need me, kind of thing.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah. And then this last no, January before that, January 2023, my current therapist said, I think you don't need to see me every week. I'll be here if you need me, but I think you need to just go fly, be free, live in your
That's
healing.
awesome.
And I was
Mhm.
like, I was a little shocked.
Right. Right.
Um, but I think I have called her multiple times since then, and I've had
Yeah.
sessions with her. Hmm.
That's
And
important. Yeah, that's
yeah,
important to have
so
tune-ups
yeah,
when you need it.
it's been a back and forth, fits and starts. And again, I almost feel like it's given to me. Like, okay, you need to do this. And I just have a sense about it.
That's awesome. Carolyn, what about for
Yeah.
you?
You know, when I look back on it during the total crisis years, when I
Mhm.
started remembering at 36 what had happened, uh, I think I was so overwhelmed and I was so terrified, just terrified that I'd lose my family because I felt like I was
Mm,
just losing my mind.
Mm.
Um, and so I did therapy about every 2 weeks anyway, but I had
Mhm.
this wonderful therapist. And I felt like I just had issue after issue, like you're trying to come up for air, but you're just being swirled around in so many vortexes. It felt like it just kind of a wave after wave after wave where I just couldn't get air. And that was certainly probably the first 10 years. And then I would take some breaks, but I look back on it and my therapist was very busy. I felt like if I stopped seeing him, I wouldn't
Oh,
get back
right,
in on his
right.
schedule, kind of thing. But I'm really thankful I did as much as I did. And I was
Mhm.
paying out of pocket. I don't know if any of you had insurance helping
Mhm.
you. I certainly didn't. Um, so
And that's a
anyway,
lot. That's a commitment to your
Mhm.
health.
Mhm.
oh, it's
Mhm.
a lot, but I just felt like this was the only way I could keep my family, work, husband,
Mhm.
all of that together. And it
Mhm.
did work. I mean, it helped me tremendously. So
Good for you. 10 years is a long time.
It is.
yeah,
And
yeah.
Mhm.
I think one of the really cool things that Emily, you said, and everything Carol said, I'm not trying to put that out, but I just wanted to go back to that one thing you said, and I bet Carol can resonate with this, is that when you're trying to get back to a blocked memory, like I always had this reoccurring dream. I always knew my
Hmm.
entire life that me and my dad and Craig had gone to this motel room. Like it never, I
Oh,
just
you
always knew it.
dreamed it.
No, I knew that, but
You knew that it happened.
I did know that we went
Yeah.
to a hotel room. I didn't know what happened in there. I assumed that, it was just rape, that they just took me
Hmm.
there. But I knew it was bad. And when I would go to hotel rooms as a child, I mean, as an adult with my own children,
Mhm.
I'd be up pacing all night. So I knew
I
something
can't
was
imagine.
bad.
Yeah.
But so my point, going back to your being will move you into the healing direction. And I believe that God moves us into
Mhm.
that too, because
Hmm.
I have a super deep faith. So I do believe that when it's time, because a lot of therapists kind of dig for it. And I always tell people, I remember walking out of this one therapist's office, Margaret, I saw her for several years, and she fired me. She said, Jody, your issues are too big. I need you to go to the
Mhm.
guy who
Yeah.
trained me, which I appreciate that for. But I was walking out and she had this big stack of books. And I said, what are those books for? She said, I have a client who's trying to get back to a memory. I have a feeling that client was me.
Yeah.
But you know what I said to her? That client won't ever get back there until that client's ready. And it's
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
kind of thing. I think that people
Yeah.
go digging and hunting and diving. Dude, you don't have to dig and hunt and dive. When you have gotten to the place where your body
Hmm.
feels safe and you know that you're safe, it's going to come out. And I think there's this beautiful leading of the Holy Spirit that says, okay, you're ready. Like
Mhm.
you've gone far enough. We're going to bring this out. That's how it worked in my life. And that it did work, but there were times, I did rebel or whatever. I just ran from it. I remember one day my counselor said to me exactly this, Jody, your mother hated you. And I looked at him
Mhm.
and I left for a year, an entire
Mm.
year, because he always tried to get me to talk about my mom.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I wasn't going to go there because she's the only thing I had left.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, can we just keep that in the
Yep.
ground? Let's just keep that
Mhm.
out there in that buried denial ground. We are not, I hear the bones, leave that shit covered.
Mhm.
So he wasn't wrong, but I left for a year, you guys, because I didn't have the
Hmm.
strength to face that. I walked back in and I looked at him and I said, you know what you said last time? And he said, I do. And I said, were you scared to say that? And he said, it can go two ways. It can make a client run, but ultimately he moved me into healing. He was an
Mhm.
amazing man.
Mhm.
He's like an angel on earth to me. He changed
Hmm.
my life and literally changed my life. And because I started seeing him because I wanted to have a relationship, you guys, and I was such a fucking mess. I couldn't have a relationship with a man because I didn't
Hmm.
trust. They were awful. You know what I mean? Like, and I just didn't
Mhm.
want a relationship with a man. I did, but not really. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just wanted to
Yeah.
be alone because I was sick of all the garbage. So I don't know, you have to find a good therapist because there's a lot of bad ones too. I mean,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I know that each one of us here on this call has had good ones, but I would really say to people listening, if you think you have a bad therapist, you probably do because you're
You
hearing us
do.
say you do, right, guys?
And what's funny, what I see right now is I've started going through Kaiser therapy. It's
Hmm.
free. And they've been doing amazing things trying to provide therapy for people. But anyway, because I haven't been in therapy for a long time,
Hmm.
but I see this very intellectual talking about issues.
Mhm.
They don't want you to cry. They don't want you to
Really?
be,
What?
yes, I'm seeing this because I've seen a
Oh
number of
my
different people
gosh.
there, and it's very kind of intellectually talking about things like, and I'm not
That's
saying it doesn't have
wild.
any benefit, but I recovered because with my
The
main therapist,
emotion.
I was really dumping the emotion. And yeah, so, but, and I will say, I probably saw 7, 8 therapists before I found
Yes.
Paul,
Yep.
the man I worked so much with. And in fact, they had no idea what was wrong with me. This was before I remembered, and they would,
Mhm.
they would say all kinds of crazy things that, what are you, crazy? I had one of them say that to me.
Yeah, well, and if somebody doesn't want you to have emotions, let me tell you, you need to find another therapist.
Yeah.
That and actually, my counselor that I went to, he is a cognitive behavioral therapist, which
Mm-hmm.
they believe that relationship is what, you know what I mean? Like they bring you
Mhm.
into a
Mhm.
therapeutic relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I do not believe that those clothy kind of people that just talk about books and how to heal, you have to kind of have a relationship, right? People hurt you and people also help you heal. Don't you guys think?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And somebody you feel really safe with,
Yes,
you know.
100%. A
Yeah,
100%. I
yeah.
I wanted to there I was reading, it's crazy that you just brought that up about emotion because Psalms in the Bible are probably one of my favorite thing. I read a Psalms every day, and King David was a guy that was an emotional wreck almost. Like he would say, oh, woe is me, but then he'd say, oh, everything's wonderful. But he gave us this example of prayer. Like Psalms are a book of prayer, right? And so I'm reading this book right now by John Eldridge, and I just absolutely love him. But he said that I love this part. And Carol, it just made me think of that. And this book just
Mm.
happens to be laying here. And he says, so I decided that if God could handle David's full of range of emotions, he could handle mine.
Yeah,
Right. And so the truth
yeah.
is that we, moving into that, because now I can't even believe that we're getting at time, but we still have some time here. When we talk about, so now we've talked about those residual effects with us. We've talked about counseling and when to
Mm-hmm.
stop and when not to. Now, when you're in the off time, I just turned 60, and you guys, there's still times I want to talk stuff out. You know what I mean? Like I had
Mhm.
18
Oh,
years of sheer misery. Like it just, or I have a
yeah.
dream that comes up. In fact,
Mhm.
we were just evacuated here. A wildfire came through. It was 300 yards from our
Oh,
neighbor's house. We were evacuated for 6 days. And you guys,
oh,
we all live with CPTSD. I know we all
Oh
do. And guess what
gosh.
happened? The third
yeah.
night, I was trying to do really good. I was trying to not drink too much. All of those things, self-care,
Mm-hmm.
and on the third night, I had that old dream come back where I murdered somebody and I got away with it. My uncle was there. It's the same dream I used to have all the time.
Oh,
And you know what I knew? Oh no. And so I woke up and talked to my husband about it because I could tell that because I was in other people's homes, I was out of my home.
yeah.
Because the other thing that people don't really understand is to survive childhood trauma, maybe I'm wrong. Now I'm going to speak for myself. I live in a pretty controlled environment. My house
Yeah.
is pretty tidy. My world is controlled. I'm,
Mm-hmm.
kind of ruled. I go to work, I come home. I don't like a lot of people in my house. When I do, my husband needs to talk to me about it. You know what I mean? I
Mhm.
like dinner
Totally.
parties, but I like it. So when I'm taken out of that safety environment and I have to
Mm-hmm.
travel for work, so I prepare for that because it's not always easy for me. And here all of a sudden I woke up with that dream. And you know what I thought, you guys? I'm getting on a boat and I'm going across the lake and I'm crawling up the hill to my house. They let us back that day, but I'll tell you what, I
Mm.
started praying and saying, God, I got to go home. I'm not
Yeah.
making it out here. And I know he
Yeah.
Mhm.
listened to me because they lifted that. Well, they actually didn't. We didn't realize it wasn't for our side, but they let us in. And I was so thankful. So,
But
you guys, we
you
need to
weren't
talk.
safe. You
Yeah,
See, isn't
weren't
that
safe. You had a
completely.
weird?
raging fire, and it's going to
Mhm.
trigger so much,
Isn't that
Mhm.
in a
isn't that
survivor.
crazy? So with
Yeah.
stopping counseling, I wanted to stop, I mean, I wanted to end tonight's podcast with to me, I cry out like David does often to God. If I'm confused, I cry out. If I'm sad, I
Mhm.
cry out. If I'm happy, I cry out. Like people hear me on here and I'll use words that most religious people won't because I need a relationship with somebody that I can talk to all the time in the
Mhm.
bathtub when I wake up. Because I need
Mhm.
that internal safety and God gives that to me. So I just wonder how you guys feel about that. Because, do you guys feel sometimes like we can't always just go to our husbands or our friends and be
I
like,
know.
hey, can we talk about this? But
Our
sometimes we
poor
want to.
husbands.
I
Yeah.
know it. I know. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. Um, I want to first say something. I just had somebody gave me a document about this dreams, these nightmares that keep
Mhm,
coming back.
mhm.
And it was that before you go to sleep, you complete that dream in a positive way.
Oh,
And
Mm.
so you start programming your brain before you go to
interesting.
sleep that how this could have actually happened, or how you were not to blame for this. You were not, it's not your fault, or whatever you need to say to yourself. And it
That's
does kind of
beautiful,
help.
right? And I
Uh,
haven't had a dream like that in years and years and years. And so I
oh,
knew I was in that state. But I love that,
Mhm.
Carol, because again, see, children believe they're complicit in these acts. I
yes.
didn't
Mhm.
murder that lady,
Boy, I
but
can tell.
every
Yeah.
time I have that
Mhm.
dream, you guys, I'm the murderer.
Mm.
They're not the murderer. I kill her. And I'm like, what? And I don't know why my uncle's always there. That's a very, I know there's a significance to that, but I'll never
Yeah.
know. But
And I think
it's,
that's so sad to think you took that on, and it's so
yeah.
normal. So
Mhm.
It
normal.
is. Well, and that's what
Yeah.
we all do, right? And it was the thing that
Mhm.
my father apologized about. But anyway, getting back to that, you guys, I
Yes, I'm
I
sorry.
think no, no, no. I love that. I love that you brought
Hmm.
that up. But to the point of people always tell us we only have so much time to talk about this, and I say poppycock.
Hmm.
We're never quite finished, are we, ladies?
No,
Mm-mm.
we're never. Yeah, you don't finish. We never will, because the subject is too immense.
Right? So, Carol, what do you do in those times when you want to talk to somebody?
So, I will journal.
Hmm.
Like when I'm really upset, I will write everything down, and
Mhm.
I hate this and I hate that person. I'm so mad this
I
happened.
love those kind of journals.
Yeah. And then I've said this before. I go in the car and I just blast it out. I use all kinds of language and just
Good
pretend that
girl.
person is sitting next to
Good
me or
girl.
whatever, and really get it out,
Mhm.
because I'm a huge believer in that,
Me
that
too.
this
Mhm.
talking quietly about this stuff does not get it out of your
It
soul.
doesn't.
Well, and
It
No,
it's
doesn't.
honestly not even appropriate to
no,
the crime, right? Like
It's so
no.
true. You're
it's
faking it then.
appropriate to
Yep.
scream and holler and
Yes,
swear and be
yes.
completely appalled.
Yes.
Yes. And
Mhm.
100%.
I also found that the terror was so huge in me. And I still once in a while will do this. I scream. I just don't,
Mhm.
I'm a singer too. So um I just don't connect my vocal cords, and I go in the car and just scream and scream and scream. And it is the most cathartic thing I can do
Mhm.
to get that terror out of me that still
Mhm.
can show its
Mhm.
head. So
It can,
Mhm.
and that's the part, I guess, that I always want to say. And I love these conversations
mm.
because it's okay to have conversations about it. We're good, strong, healthy people,
Yeah.
and we can still talk about it.
Oh,
It
yes.
is not, you know what I mean? But there is this weird thing like when I'm healed, I won't talk about it anymore. Poppycock,
Mm-mm,
that's not
mm-mm.
the truth. It's just not the truth.
Yeah.
So, Emily, what do you do when you want to? I love that we all have our own thing, and I love that
Yeah.
Carol gets in the car and screams. I have done that myself before. To my mother,
Well,
I
when
had to do
I'm
that.
angry, I have to like hit something. And I've been this way since I was a kid, just
Hmm.
hitting my pillow.
Yeah.
I've done a whole lot of kickboxing. I've done a
Mm,
whole lot of running. Like there's now, as I'm getting older and my body can't handle the
Mhm.
impact anymore, it's like swimming, it's pushing my heart rate on whatever gym equipment I can, but
Right.
not excessively, but like for half an
No,
hour,
I
just
get it.
get that energy out. Um, and I do a lot of singing in the car. So I
oh,
have a whole uh playlist that
Oh,
I
I
call
love it.
PTSD
Yeah.
recovery playlist.
I
And it's
love
all
it.
these songs I brought together that are a mix of worship songs, of songs about personal growth, of songs about
Cool.
home, the theme of home.
Mhm.
And I listened to that today, actually, on my
Oh,
way
I
back home,
love
because
that. Music is
yeah,
huge.
and I need to sing. Singing is a big thing for me, but I've done a whole lot of praying, mostly outside walking, a lot of crying while I'm praying outside walking.
Mhm.
Done a lot of journaling, but
Oh, I love that.
thankfully I have an extremely patient husband. And it came up even this last week where I realized something I needed to talk about, and he was able to listen. So that's really helpful too. But I am sensitive to not wanting to overload him, because he's got his
Right,
own
right.
everything too. So
It's true. And right. And we really hope we're at time. We're actually over time, but I just love
Oh.
visiting with you guys. And
Mhm.
thank you so much for being here tonight. And we just hope for you listening that this helps give you that cathartic release that you're looking for as well. And if you have a topic that you would like the three of us to discuss, we would love you to send that in to gracedxoxo@hotmail.com. I get a lot of emails. I read every single one of them and respond. And if you're out there and you're listening and liking what we're doing, please give us a like or a follow, because that's how it works out here. Even though the analytics are great, and in my heart, that's absolutely fine. So be blessed this week, you guys. I will be in touch with you guys to schedule our next one. Be thinking about what topics we want. And God bless your week. And I want extra protection over you guys for stepping out and doing this stuff. Thank you so
Thank you so
much.
much, Jody. It's wonderful.
Love you guys. See you
Okay.
have a
soon.
good
Love you all.
night.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.